going to try to get away with that and use the microphone
It's fine.
because I like to wave my hands and I like to walk around. Hate to be burdened holding that. As a sidelight, my mother was born on a farm about 30 miles west of here, just past Spring Reed, in a small hamlet called Clyde. But she wasn't really born in Clyde, she was born on a farm. And it's right next to Taliesin, Frank Lloyd Wright's school. And I had an uncle, her brother, John Flannery, was a guy that I just absolutely loved. And he is just a really, really funny guy. And he was a farmer, but he was a really, really funny guy. And I'd love to hang around with him. And I saw him a lot. And one day I said to him, you know, Uncle John, you're right here by Frank Lloyd Wright. And he was like, oh yeah. He's a college professor. What? I said, no, he makes buildings. He builds buildings. He goes, well, he's got a school there, so he must be a college professor. I said, well, no, he's, you know, pretty famous building builder. And he said, well, you know, he made the county building in Richmond Center. It doesn't have any windows. That's not much of a building. And he also told me that he used to sell eggs and butter to Wright, that Wright would write a burro over to his farm, and then give him money, my uncle would give him eggs and butter. He's 100% Irish, I'm 100% Irish, so I guess we like to tell tall tales. Because before I came here today, I drove out there to kind of reconnect with the farm. The farm is still there, but the house that my mother grew up in has been torn. And I noticed that the ride from Taliesin to the family farm was about 5 miles. And I thought, well, Frank Lloyd Wright's not riding a burro 5 miles. And then I went to Richmond Center to see my mother's sister's house, which is up on the hill above the old part of town. And I drove by a building, I drove by the county building, which is beautiful. And it's got 1 million windows. And then I drove by a building that they're rehabbing, which is, I think it was the A.D. German warehouse. And it's a Wright building, and it didn't have any windows. So my uncle, on both of those stories that he told, seemed to be a little inaccurate. Can't tell him that, he's long gone. But I got to see his house today, and I saw his farm, and it was just wonderful to reconnect with that. My mother used to take us all up from Chicago because she felt city kids were a little soft, and it was important for us to work on a farm for 2 weeks every year. So we would go and we would work on the farm. And on Sundays, they would throw us in with the pigs. And we would chase the pigs around, and the pigs would chase us around. It was kind of like their entertainment, I suppose. There's another thing I want to say, too, before I get to this, and that is about 6 weeks ago, well, there had been a scheduling problem, and they had asked me to switch, and could I do it this, switch it from last month to this month this time. I said, fine, of course. And then I noticed that the Bears were playing tonight. And I thought, oh, I like to watch the Bears, and I'm kind of a Bears fan. And then as I got closer to this, and as I realized that the Bears were almost as bad as the Green Bay Packers, I realized I wasn't going to be missing anything. I'm very happy that I got an invitation to come up here and talk to everybody. In 1979, I had a really good year. I was in a car, it was a nice car. I was on the East Coast. I was all by myself, and I had 10 days where I didn't have to be anywhere. Didn't have to be back in Chicago for almost 2 weeks. So I had things that I wanted to do. And one of the things I wanted to do was I wanted to drive across New Jersey listening to the Bruce Springsteen bootleg called Piece de Resistance, which was his last show of the Darkness at the Edge of Town tour. And it was in Passaic, New Jersey, which is the capital of Bruce Springsteen nation, and it's an absolutely tribal thing to listen to. I also wanted to go to upstate New York and find Big Pink, which is the house that Bob Dylan and his electric band, which became the band the night they rolled Dixie down. That's where they holed up in the summer of 1967. They kind of reinvented themselves. And when they came back out, they basically turned music on its head, which had been long form psychedelia, long guitar solos, and they brought it back to the concept of the song, and a song that built on different types of American music, rock and roll, R&B, gospel. I wanted to go there, and I wanted to go to Gettysburg. And I thought that was all kind of mutually exclusive. The reason I wanted to go to drive across New Jersey and go to upstate New York was because I thought that if I kind of contacted what these guys contacted, to see where they lived, see what they experienced, what they saw, that it would somehow help me become a better songwriter. And it didn't. However, I've had quite a long career of writing jingles, which is kind of a songwriting thing, but it's not the sort of thing that overly impresses people. I always wanted to be a songwriter. I thought I was going to be a songwriter. But it really was kind of a pursuit that I wanted to just somehow contact what they contacted. And of course, Gettysburg, I had, grown up reading about Gettysburg. It was the 100th anniversary in 1961. I think I was 9 years old then. And I just wanted to, I had the Marx soldier things, and I had the American Heritage Civil War book that had the maps with all the little guys on it, and I would try to set up the battles in my backyard. And I'd always dreamed about going to Gettysburg, and I finally did in that summer. Gettysburg looked pretty different than it looks now. I don't know how many people have been to Gettysburg. How many went when the tower was up? Yeah, it's long gone. It's funny, I used to love taking the Lincoln Highway across Pennsylvania from the west to the east. And you go through Chambersburg and come up over South Mountain. And remember the very first time I did it, you looked out and then 10 miles away, you could see that tower. That's the first thing you saw of the battlefield. It's not on the battlefield, it's just off the battlefield. And it was a private thing. It was like, I'm not sure, 180 feet tall, I think. And you can take an elevator up. And of course, my first time in Gettysburg, I saw that thing and I was like, ooh, I gotta go up there. And you pay your $3. And yeah, I got on the elevator. And I remember the coolest thing about the elevator was that there was music playing. I'd never been in an elevator where there was music playing. And it was playing the Battle Hymn of the Republic. And then when you got up there, you had 360-degree viewing. You could walk around. And this is a photo I took from the tower, looking down at the Bloody Angle. You can see where that road comes out. And what's interesting about that road's not there anymore. They got rid of it. But at that time, you could drive right out, past the clump of trees, which is on the left, and drive out and park right next to the stone wall that Armistead went up and over. And I remember sitting there, and I was by myself, and then another car pulled up. So you notice, this is like a Tuesday. there's nobody there. And I don't know if it was, there was a lull after the centennial, but it was, I pretty much had the place to myself. So, but I parked out by the angle, another car pulled up behind me, and I sat down on the wall there. And I was thinking, Armistead probably came up right over the wall there, right behind my car, and right in between my car and the Torino behind me. You can't do that. Of course, they got smart and said, oh, we shouldn't have people going, oh, Armistead ran right by Pat's car. That's not a good way to do things. This is a photo that I took from the Lee Monument, looking out at Pickett's Charge. And again, you'll notice there's nobody there. And there's the tower. Now, here was a problem with the tower. Anywhere you went on the battlefield, you could see the tower. And the National Park guys would go, well, that allows you to know kind of where Meade's headquarters is, no matter where you are on the battlefield. You see the tower over there? That's about where Meade's headquarters are, which is them trying to put lipstick on a pig, obviously. I mean, we don't need to know where Meade's headquarters is all the time. And you've got this terrible intrusion. Well, of course, I think it was in 2000 or 1999, I think they actually tore it down. And they made a big deal about it. They blew it up and it collapsed, and there's a great photo of it just about halfway through its fall. And now the National Park Service owns it. I've been to Gettysburg probably 25 times since, maybe 26. I tried to count, and my mind, I got lost coming here, so my mind is trying to remember things. It's not that good. But I'm a musician, and I've spent my whole life playing in bands. At this point, I was actually playing full-time. I was traveling around the country. Then I started a music production company in a recording studio in downtown Chicago. And I was like done with it. I was just going to concentrate on producing music and jingles and writing for television. And then I got offered a keyboard spot in a band that was really, really popular in Chicago, and was popular in different places around the country. And I kind of felt like I had to do it. And one of the places we were popular was Charleston, South Carolina. Now, who's been to Charleston, South Carolina? What a city. I mean, you just feel it everywhere. You feel the history everywhere. And there was a battle outside the town called Secessionville. And when we went there, it was right after Hugo had hit, so it was January of 1990. And the city looked like there had just been a war there. There were houses on its side, there was debris everywhere. It was amazing to look at this. And I went out and found the battlefield. The battlefield had trees knocked over and roots showing everywhere, and it was amazing to see it. I felt like, well, I just missed the battle. It looked like the fight had just happened. And I thought, I've always thought I could write an article for like Civil War Times or something like that. So I started researching the battle, and of course we used to play there every 3 months or so. So I had a lot of time during the day. I'm sure everyone thinks, oh, rock musicians are dissipated drug addicts, and some of that's true. But I would get up every morning and I'd go to the Charleston Historical Society or the library or anything and start researching this battle. And slowly getting all kinds of information coming in, it went from being an article into a book called Secessionville Assault on Charleston. I really had no interest in writing a book. And it kind of, because of the information coming in and the stories that I was seeing, I mean, these amazing stories about these guys who fought there, and the story of the battle, the drama involved in everything, I felt like, I guess I should write a book. And the worst thing you could do in the whole world is to tell people you're going to write a book, because then you have to write a book. You look like you're, just kidding yourself. As a result of this, I started writing for North and South magazine. I was on the editorial board there. I wrote 2 issues of Blue and Gray. A friend of mine who I'd gotten a job as the editor of North and South started his own magazine, Civil War Monitor. I'm on the advisory board there, and I've written for that. But this book has appeared on a list, a Civil War list of great one-hit wonders. I don't know, you don't brag about that. Maybe you do, I don't know. And, but I could never find something I wanted to write about again. I mean, it's a big part. This book took 7 years of my life. It wasn't the whole time, but it was a 7-year process. And in my business, which was media, commercials, movies, that sort of thing, there's a thing called the elevator pitch. And that is, if you've got an idea for some kind of creative thing, you've got the amount of time it takes to ride in an elevator with somebody to make your pitch and make it sound like the coolest thing in the world. And I was sitting around just a couple months before the whole COVID thing hit, so it was in 2019. And I used to have games, where we would try to come up with the shortest elevator pitch you could come up with. Something that explains exactly what something is and somehow communicates how great it would be if someone gave you a bunch of money to do this. And the thing I came up with one day, I was just sitting there daydreaming. I daydream a lot. I came up with Gettysburg in color, a book where every picture in it, and it's a picture book, picture on every page, and every picture's in color. Now, what's the challenge there? Well, all the photos on Gettysburg are black and white. All the etchings that describe the action are black and white. Now, there's paintings of the battle scenes, of course. But the big problem is that any action, there's no photos of it. And so any action is going to be some kind of artistic thing. It's not going to be photo. And around the same time that I came up with this idea, I was grazing on the internet, and something came up, learn to colorize black and white photos. I thought, well, maybe that's something I could do, I could write a book, I guess I could colorize black and white photos. And you do it, this was done with a digital painting program. And so I kind of messed around with that, and it just wasn't looking very good. And then, because I was messing around with this digital painting program, I got, somehow the internet's reading your mind or something, and all of a sudden something comes up on your feed that says, use artificial intelligence to colorize old photos. It's a piece of software called de-oldify. I don't know exactly how it works, but it's, it's not bad. I started combining those two things, the digital painting and using the AI to not only make colors, but have it do the digital painting too. I came up with like 4 or 5 photos. I did a portrait. Portrait looked terrible, so I called my daughter, Dylan is her name, by the way, named after Bob Dylan. My wife will tell you it's Dylan Thomas, but no, it's Bob Dylan. And she said she wanted to swing at one of these things. So she actually did Robert E. Lee, and it looked fantastic, and she came up with her own way to colorize it. I said, well, listen, you want to do a book with me? Now, she's grown up with me her whole life, and she recognizes that you know, I'm a little moody. You know, I mean, I had her convinced that bears lived in the park next to our house, and that the sewer was a bear trap. And so she was like, well, do you mean it? You really want me to write a book with you? And I said, yeah. So I called up my friend Ted Savas, who published the session though. And I said, Ted, I got this idea. And he's like, okay, what is it? And I started thinking, ooh, I'm about to do an elevator pitch. And I said, Gettysburg in color. And he was like, okay, so it's a book of all color photos, color drawings of Gettysburg. And it tells the story of the whole battle. And I was like, yeah, you got it. Ooh, it was a good elevator pitch. And a day later, we signed a contract to do the book. This was in 2020. And originally it was going to be one book. And then after a year, I said, Ted, it's going to have to be two books. There's just too much material, and I don't want to throw any of it away. So the first book was from Brandy Station, the cavalry battle on June 9th. To halfway through the battle, the assault on Little Round Town. Volume 2 is the battle in the wheat field to Lee's retreat, Falling Waters. There's going to be volume 3, which is the battlefield after the battle to 1938 when they invented color film. Well, what's interesting about Rick's talk, in 1938, at the end of my third book, is about FDR being at the battlefield giving a speech. And he talks about Lincoln a lot. As a matter of fact, he uses the same quote that he used in the Veterans Day speech. Now this will give you an idea of how the process worked. I took this photo. I didn't take this photo. You know, it's in the garden. And blew it up and spent 3 days cleaning it up. Now, you know, they used emulsions, they used glass plates. They did it, they turned it into a reverse photo immediately on the field in a wagon a couple feet away from where they took the photo. And these are guys who are, almost all these photographers ended up dying nuts because of the mercury. They get mercury poisoning and it killed them all. They all went crazy. And they might have been suffering from it already because, I mean, imagine following Civil War battle around and trying to get there. And because you want to get pictures like this. Like I said, this took me almost a week of cleaning up that single photo. I would blow it up as much as I could. I had 2 different software processes that I used to get rid of scratches, to get rid of anomalies, to get rid of bubbles that had formed in the emulsions. And once I got it to that point, I ran it through the AI process. It's you don't really download anything. You license it, and then I do it online. It's all done in the cloud. And it came back to me. It didn't look like this, but it was pretty good. But I'd say 60%. Then I used my painting process to go in and make the uniforms more accurate, to bring out highlights, to make the boots look more accurate. One of the interesting things about this is the AI, for years, since this picture was taken, which was just a couple days after the battle, everyone thought that this was a picture of all Union troops. The AI said that no, the guy in the back was a Confederate. And by using that, and you could I actually cropped this before I worked on it because I didn't think it. I had no intention of trying to figure out where this picture was taken. But, so I cropped out some of the dead Confederates in the upper left. But as a result, I was able to cross this with the Elliott burial map and figure out where this photo was taken. Now, guys like Gary Edelman don't think I'm right. He thinks that I'm not going to tell you what he thinks. But I think it's pretty accurate. And then I would use some filtering to make it a little more in focus. And this is what I came up with. Now, I know these were Pennsylvania units, probably from the Bucktails from Stone's Brigade that fought around McPherson Mid, or McPherson Farm. I did a deep dive on what those shoes would look like, what those brogans look like. And that's one of the things that I approached, and not to just go on trying to make these color photos. I approached it as though I had to research this stuff in the same way that I researched the Battle of Secessionville. I would go online, I would get different hues of the colors of the uniforms, the color of the grass, the brogans, their belts, their buttons. As we proceed through this, you see, I was doing this kind of a research project, but it was a research in what these colors were of everything that was associated with these photos. This next one is our good friend Abner Doubleday, and this is more of an exercise of what my daughter did, what Dylan did, with the skin color. Because you notice with the skin color, there's maybe 40 different hues of flesh color on the face, and that's what gives it the realistic look. I was able to find his uniform online. It's in a museum somewhere. And what I was able to do was take the photo, put it onto my computer, and I had a program that would sample his color and turn it into digital paint. And then I would use that digital paint with a digital brush and paint his uniform. I did the same thing with his buttons. The brass buttons are a different color than the shoulder straps that he's got. And that white and black are accurate to those shoulder straps. I might not have found his shoulder straps, but I found tons of examples of shoulder straps and kind of figured it out from that point. Another thing I decided to do with these portraits was that I liked when the guy in the portrait or the woman in the portrait, when she was looking at you, I thought that had a lot more of a hit. It would hit you a lot more because you feel like you're looking at them and they're looking at you. This is John Reynolds. This is a photo you really don't see very often. He's standing with Ambrose Burnside's staff. And he just happened to be, it was right after the Battle of Fredericksburg, I think it's in February. And he happened to be visiting Burnside's headquarters, so he stood with the staff and got his photo taken. But I just love the way he's looking at it. You know, every photo of Reynolds, he's looking off to the side, and you know, they're all doing that Napoleonic thing. But here he's looking right at you, and here, you see he's a badass. Right? I mean, look at that face. That's a guy that's going to lead people in the battle. You can see him at Herbst Woods screaming at the Iron Brigade to get in there and get going. And speaking of Reynolds, this is the technique that I used to tell the story. You have this photo. This was a lithograph. It was a black and white lithograph. Now, the AI doesn't work on something like this. It only works on photos, or it doesn't work very well on this. So I did this all by hand, in the same way that you would do color by numbers, except I didn't have the numbers. I had his uniform, so I used that color. I would sample his uniform online. Gettysburg, the national park had the uniform that he had on when he was killed. I think it's in private hands now, but they had it for a while. And I got a photo of it, so I sampled that. What I love about this is, you'll notice, is that one Confederate, 20 feet in front of everybody else, is he the one that just shot Reynolds? It's hard to tell, but that's that kind of story that the artist told back in that day. But once he was shot, he was carried away by his staff. And this is him down on the lower side here. Now this is the Rothermel painting that Pennsylvania Museum of History has. They've got, I think, 5 of them. They're big, huge things. And where those other 2 things I was able to get out of the Library of Congress, I had to license this particular painting. However, what you're looking at here is only a little bit of it. And I blew it up. Now, if you see the whole painting and you're looking at it and you're like, oh, that's nice. Well, when you blow it up, all of a sudden you see what's going on here. And the beautiful thing that the artist did, where Reynolds is dead, he's not the same color as everybody else. That's Herbst Woods up there. You can see the Confederates on the far side of Willoughby Run have fallen back. And this is, the Iron Brigade is going through the woods and are knocking back the Confederates that you can see there. This is also one of the only representations we have of what McPherson Ridge looked like from the Union perspective. If you go there today, and if you're going to that first day, and you go up the hill off the Mumensburg, not the Mumensburg, the Fairfield Road, and you go up that hill, and then you're on that long thing, Herbst Woods is off to your left, and there's all the First Corps monuments along there. And you're on this big, nice, flat top to this ridge. Well, that doesn't look flat, does it? That looks like a hill coming down, and then the hill comes back up. There's actually 3 big hills that were there. And when they built the roadways in 1895, they flattened that whole ridge. It doesn't look anything like it looked down. That's just going sideways. A couple of now these are photos that I worked on that actually are going to be in volume 3. The Gettysburg Memorial Battlefield Association made those signs. Here's the place where General Reynolds was killed. It seems kind of wordy, right? And that's kind of near where the monument is that was dedicated a year before the 25th anniversary. There evidently were 4 or 5 places that were identified where Reynolds was killed, so we don't really know which one it was. With this, I used the AI, and then I redid some of the woods because I sampled photos of the woods in Herbst Woods, and that's kind of the color of what it was. And with this, I used the AI, but the AI didn't catch the color of the monument, so I blacked out the color that it gave me and redid the color of the monument using the digital paint.
So now, I have a question.
Sure.
What would that look like, the picture on the left, if you didn't use AI? What's the difference?
It would be black and white.
Oh, so, I see.
Yeah, these were both black and white. These were taken in the 1880s.
Right.
Yeah, this is
The one on the left, when was that taken?
the one on the left was taken. That's the Gettysburg Battlefield Memorial Association. So that's before the Army took over in 1895. So it's probably, and it's before this monument was built. So it's probably the 1880s, mid 1880s, I would say. And so that gives you a small idea of how we tell the story by using these color things. Now I'm going to give you a huge moment on the second day of the battle for East Cemetery Hill. This was a black and white photo that was taken from Stevens Knoll, halfway between Cemetery Hill and Culp's Knoll. There's that little thing there. where they were able to hit the Confederates came out of the town. You can see the town of Gettysburg there. They came out, presented their left flank to Stevens' people, and attacked that way up against East Cemetery Hill, which is up over there. You can see it. You can see the stone wall that the 1st Corps formed behind, the 11th Corps, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that. That the Confederates came around, the Louisianans close enough, broke through and made it all the way up to the top of the hill. Avery's brigade, 3 North Carolina regiments, got chopped up out here, and Avery was killed out there. If you go here today, you see a lot of woods here, and you see the high school, Gettysburg High School, takes up most of that cornfield there. But this is what it looked like the day, pretty much the day of the battle. I think this photo was taken in 1865, so it's 2 years after the battle. Something we wanted to do, we wanted the maps to be in color. And I came up with the idea of using Google Earth, and then I gave the photo, or the rendering that I got off Google Earth, I gave it to my son, and he got rid of all the modern encumbrances and turned it into what it looked like the time of the battle. My daughter came up with the concept of all the little hatted fellows that are going around. The compass points to describe, and those were compasses from 1864, I think. And then I showed her what the cameras looked like at the time, and she made these little things so that photo you saw from Stevens Knoll was right here. You get the book, you'll see all the photos have corresponding cameras on the maps that show you where the photo was taken. You know, William Frassanita, basically invented that. This was a lithograph, a black and white lithograph that I hand colored, which shows pretty much the same scene. You're looking out at the Confederates coming out of the town and swinging to the left, and they're going to attack up East Cemetery Hill. You can see this Evergreen Cemetery gate house there at the top. And you'll notice too that the clouds look really good, don't they? And it was something that I just was messing around with to try to make clouds look like clouds, and all of a sudden it turned into that. We were really happy with the way that turned out.
Excuse me, do we know that it was actually cloudy during the battle?
Well, that's actually artillery smoke rising.
Okay.
It was not cloudy. It was 7:30 in the evening. The sun's going down. So this was kind of a challenge where we had that initial shock as during the daylight, and now you're seeing it starting to get darker and darker. There was an artist named Briscoe who did a series of 12 drawings of the battlefield, of the battle. This was one of them. And again, I hand-painted this whole thing. That's the Confederates out in the middle of the field getting hammered from Stevens Knoll over there and moving to attack up East Cemetery Hill. And you notice too, these Briscoe did a really nice job when he did these paintings. And these guys were obviously part of the Louisiana Tigers. That was the first Louisiana's uniform. And he had done that, so I found a one that's still in existence, and again, sampled the colors, and then painted them onto that. Scott Mingus, who's a friend, said to me, well, that's nice and everything, but all the Louisianans they were the best dressed regiments at Gettysburg, because while everyone else was going through Pennsylvania, trying to be nice to the Pennsylvanians and maybe, stealing pigs and everything, the Louisianans were stealing everybody's clothes. And they evidently went into battle dressed really, really nicely. He said none of them had their old uniforms. So, I found that out afterwards. I should have put them in tuxedos or something. when they get to the top of the hill, this was a unfinished watercolor by William Watt. And it just had such a cool feel to it. It's kind of almost hallucinogenic. It's kind of, it's getting dark.
Yes.
And what's lighting up the battle with the gunpowder shooting off, and he did such a nice job with the smoke and everything. But I added everything else. And that's Weidrich's battery, by the way, the German battery. And these guys didn't want to leave, and they didn't leave, really. It was really brutal. And then, of course, Edwin Forbes did this photo, or this painting, and it's in the Library of Congress. And so I was able to use this for free. Part of telling the story, as you see. And this is Carroll's people arriving, and some First Corps troops arriving. And that's the fight around Weidrich's battery right up there. And of course, that's the gatehouse. And that's that 90-foot poplar, that tree that was famously in tons of photos of it. And you see it a lot afterwards, too. I think it lasted until the 1880s. Again, my daughter, this is Samuel Carroll, a fine Irishman, who brought his brigade up. It was a Second Corps brigade that was over by the Bloody Angle, and he was ordered up, and he came up and helped knock the Confederates back down the hill. Again, she, did the flesh tones, and I did the uniform. Now, this last photo or image is very interesting, and it's a bas-relief. It's on Weidrich's battery's monument, and if you see it, it's kind of like this bronze thing. And it's really kind of hard to see stuff on it. I hand painted this. Again, you see the Louisianans. And that's Carroll's people coming from the gatehouse. And this is Krasnowski's 11th Corps people coming from, they were at the point of Cemetery Hill at the time, and they came over and helped drive these Confederates back. Finally, I include this because it's going to be in volume 3. These are some of Stephen's artillerists at their monument. You can see East Cemetery Hill in the back, and you can see kind of a vaguely Dutch building back there. That was an observatory tower that used to cost a dime to go up into, and you got this view of the battlefield. That's where I believe that's where Hancock's statue is. And I can't remember this guy here. I think his name is Collin, claimed to be the most wounded man of the Civil War. He was an artillerist with Stephen's battery, and he was hit by a shell, ripped off his arm, knocked out his eye, and left 47 metal shards in his body. And the doctor actually removed most of them, all of them, and gave them to him. So he was able to say, well, here I am with my 47 shards. And at all these Gettysburg reunions, he used to come back, and he had a pamphlet that talked about what he had done during the war, and here are his shards. And I thought, for a second, well, okay, maybe he's not an Irishman, maybe he's not telling, tall stories. But it turns out he also won the Medal of Honor at Chancellorsville. So, whatever he wanted to say, everyone should accept. These other guys were also members of Stephen's battery, and they came back here and got their photo taken. I think this was in October of 1886, I believe it was. Another angle. This is really interesting too. They built these fences around. When you see again, this is East Cemetery Hill. That's the line that the Union troops defended against the Confederate attack that came from over here. But some of these areas were private property, like this was owned by the Gettysburg Battlefield Memorial Association. And they built these gates here to keep people out when, after 6 o'clock or after 8 o'clock or something like that. So you see these kind of fences and gates around here. Again, this is pre-1895, before the Army took over. So you see this kind of fence work around. Some of the other things that I'm doing for Volume 3, just because, you know, it just looks so cool. These are Sons of Veterans from Phoenixville, Pennsylvania, which now is a suburb of Philadelphia. But, of course, I had to put musicians in the book somewhere. And they're camped out on the battlefield. And one of the things you notice here, a lot of these photographers white out the sky. And I'm not exactly sure why. It's believed that, well, with a 7-second exposure, the clouds would move such that it made it look very milky. So they would just white it out. And I made the decision, editorial decision, that I was going to recreate skies. And this is one of the versions that I came up with. Because it just wouldn't look right. Everything else was in color and then that background was all white. So I developed a number of techniques about creating clouds, what time of the day it is. Like I'm looking at this, and this is around noon, obviously, because all of the shadows are directly down from everything. I had to go through these photos and see, okay, this must be like 2 in the afternoon, because they're facing east, because we know which way their monuments align, and the shadows coming towards us. So it's got to look like the sun is behind them, and that's part of what this developing this process. That's not something that that's been hit and miss. I mean, you know, I worked on it for 6 months before it started looking natural and normal. Now, the reason I brought up those trips that I made to New Jersey and upstate New York and going out to Spring Breeze was because at that time I thought, you know, it's kind of weird, you know, I like the Civil War and I'm a rock musician that travels around the country and, you know, it seems mutually exclusive. And it wasn't until I was about 2/3 of the way through this project that I started thinking, you know, I was actually doing the same thing in both of them, going to Gettysburg, driving across New Jersey, driving to upstate New York. I was actually doing the same thing. I was trying to somehow plug in to the physical thing that these people experience. And when I realized that, just like I did this afternoon, I wanted to go plug into my mother's early life. And my Uncle John, who I loved, I wanted to see his house again and remember that and feel that. And I realized that doing these things is some kind of pursuit to understanding our history. You know, we can read a lot, and we get into the ephemera and everything. But I had this, and people who have gotten books have said to me, yeah, I really feel differently about the battle because I never get hung up about, gee, these are old photos, or these pictures are black and white and they're kind of flat looking. And you see when you add color to these things, they make them vibrant. They give them depth. They give them some kind of emotion. And that's where I came up with this concept that all I was doing to create these 2 books and the 3rd book was that I was trying to get closer to these things that meant so much to me, and to give it, and to somehow come to some conclusion about understanding and realizing, of course, that you're never going to get it completely right, but what you do is you get as close as you can, and I guess that's the point. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
understand, when you color it with your new technique, how is that different than artificial intelligence?
Well, I've done the research, so I'm getting the colors closer to what the now, like I said, I think the artificial intelligence gets you about 50–60%.
Of the color?
Yeah, and then what you have to do is do the research on the uniforms, on the belt buckles, on the guns, on the, all the swords, sword handles. I did all kinds of research on the little green in there and the bronze, just in an attempt to get closer to it, because my publisher will say, well, you're trying to do it for your audience, right? And like I just said, no, I think it was just me trying to get close to it myself, and he puts the books out. Yes.
The dead bodies in the Pennsylvanians. You said that you knew where that was. I know it's a famous picture. So where is it?
Seminary Ridge.
Okay.
Let's say you're looking at with the cupola,
Yeah.
and then the Krantz house, which is right next to it.
Okay.
It's an old house, and then Lee's headquarters is across the road here.
Okay.
If you're 60 yards off this house here and turn around, that's what you're
Let's
going to
just
see.
see. Okay. So this is maybe kind of not. That wasn't by the McPherson farm. That's more.
No. This is right down from the
Okay,
sun.
so they retreated.
Yeah,
That's where
this is part of the last stand of the first day.
Okay.
First corps.
Okay. And these guys retreated.
Yeah. Exactly.
And then.
And these are famously two shots. There's this shot, and then they picked up the camera and moved over here and shot it this way too.
Oh.
And on the far side, you see 14 dead Confederates.
Oh, wow.
Edelman will tell you they're Union troops, but no, they're Confederates. And if you look, you look at the 08 burial thing, there's 14 Confederates buried right out over there. And if you read what happened there, those are scalesmen coming forward, getting hit by artillery across the road, and then one big strong artillery line that they had from right about there all the way up to the Gettysburg.
The second, but I don't, because I think I've heard it before, but you did, on the third volume, you're doing a lot of the GAR veterans stuff. And I find it amazing that you're able to find these things. Where do you get the photos? Especially like the GAR stuff.
Well, the GAR stuff, the 75th anniversary, the Signal Corps was there. And put all their photos into 3 albums. They're at the National Archives. They aren't online, but I hired a guy who's done it for me before to go into the National Archives and make copies of everything. The 50th, there's tons of stuff all around. The Library of Congress has stuff. National Archives has a ton of stuff too. There's some private collection. I got a great one of Johnny Clem, and who was the youngest guy at the 50th, and the oldest guy who was 106, and they're sitting together in a Ford. It's pretty cool.
It's good, yeah, because I'm really impressed by everything, and just thanks for doing this. It just seems like half of it's just the research.
Yeah, it takes I'll be sitting there and I'll see, okay, he's got a pouch, he's got an ammunition pouch, but it seems awfully light. And so I'd go in and I'd see, okay, it's the 40th New York. What do we get? Do we have other photos of the 40th New York? And then I'd find that, oh, they had a much lighter brown artillery ammo pouch than other units we had.
I believe Peter Jackson did a recreation of the.
Phenomenal.
Yeah. Can you contrast what you're doing to what he did with the First World War?
Yeah, well, he used artificial intelligence too, and he used a lot of filters because there's a lot more examples of the uniforms in real time than we have with Civil War uniforms. A lot of them, they're 160 years old. The blue isn't the same color that they had, and I've had to go in searched, and there was a Georgia factory that made a type of blue jeep that I got a swatch of it. I didn't get a swatch of it, but I got a digital photo, a swatch of it that hadn't been out in the sun. So it was pretty close to what it looked like. But it was, I'm sorry. He also added audio. You know, he had lip readers looking at the I don't know if you've seen it, but it's phenomenal. It's a World War I movie. And he used a lot of the programs that they had developed for Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit and applied it to this. And of course, if you've been to the British Military Museum, you know, they've got stuff running constantly of World War I. They had a lot of footage of World War I. And so he put together this thing that kind of tells a story. What it's like being a soldier. He didn't try to tell like the history of the battle or of any battle or anything. But he colorized it. He turned it into HD, which is what I do too. The thing is that he's doing it with moving things, and then he had lip readers figuring out what everybody was saying in it, and hired actors and actresses to give it that, and he put sound effects and that sort of thing.
Even went to the extent that if it were the 1st Yorkshire Regiment that somebody was speaking, he went and found a Yorkshireman today to recreate the speech to get the accent.
Right now, I'm negotiating on doing a documentary of this, but it's based on the 25th anniversary when Longstreet and Sickles hang out for 4 days on the battlefield. And they're actually talking about hiring actors to recreate a docudrama. We'll see. You know, it's television.
So how do you deal with the fade effect of that? My wife's a weaver, and I've been in a lot of the stuff. So how do you deal with fabric degeneration and that kind of thing?
Well, one of the photos themselves show a lot of degeneration. So even if I take the color that it's supposed to be and put it on there, it will react with the photo. And if the area it has like on the knees or something, it's been worn, the color will come out different. It's it's kind of cool because I'm not really doing anything. I'm just putting the color on, and then the color is reacting to the photo, and that's out of my hands. Now I can work with the opacities and make it brighter or less bright, and mess around with it that way. But it's really fun to let kind of happenstance.
So the boys wore the knees and
the uniform will look like the knees.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just noticing in your two dust jackets, the skin tones on Lee and Meade are different on the two sides. Is that just?
Yeah, that's just for me doing screen rent.
So you didn't change anything
No.
between them? Okay,
No.
I thought maybe you continued
No,
playing with, because
it's all my daughter's fault.
Because the uniforms look pretty much the same between them. It's just that they're a little peachier in the left-hand side and the.
No, these aren't lifted from. These are lifted off, maybe lifted off Amazon.
Gotcha. Okay, so it's their fault.
Of all the photographs you accessed, were most of them Matthew Brady photos?
No. A lot of them were Alexander Gardner, Timothy O'Sullivan, a lot of Brady's. Brady went to the battlefield 2 weeks afterwards, and Gardner and O'Sullivan were there on the 5th. So Gardner and Sullivan were there. They took all the photos of the dead bodies, and there's probably, over the course of the 2 books, there might be 20 photos of the dead bodies. It's all those guys. And the shots of Little Round Top right after the battle, it's those guys. Brady, there's some Brady in there, but certainly Gardner, those would be the guys. Yeah, back there.
Do your books have the before and after, like what the picture looked like before, and then what it looks like after you generated it with that?
No, there was an article in Civil War Monitor from a couple years ago that shows the before and after. And I have a Facebook, there's a Facebook called Gettysburg in Color, and I've got some of those examples. So if you go on there and, you know, be nice to me. Anybody else? I can't tell you what an honor it was to come up to Wisconsin, Madison, one of my favorite cities, just 30 miles from where my mother grew up and where my favorite uncle was from and where my grandparents were buried, to come here and talk to everyone here. So thank you.
Thank you.
As a small gift for coming into Packerland. It's a small honorarium that we want to offer you for your education.
But you know what? Let me just give it right back to you and make it a donation to your fund.
Sure. Well, thank you very much. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I do have books.
Oh, that's what I wanted.
So if you'd like to buy a book from me, or buy both of them,
They're right in back there.
Right in
You'll be
back.
back there. They'll even sign it for you.
I'll sign it for you.